What happens when the weakest wolf in the pack discovers she was never weak at all? For Sarah Ashwood, life had been a careful dance of invisibility. An Omega in the Crescent Moon pack, she'd learned early that silence was survival. While other wolves sparred in the training grounds, their laughter echoing through the pines, she scrubbed floors in the pack house. While they feasted after successful hunts, she ate alone in the kitchen, grateful for cold leftovers. Her wolf had never emerged, not even a whisper of fur or fang, and the pack physicians shook their heads in pity. Defective, they'd called her. Broken. But when Alpha Darius Kane stood before her at the Harvest Moon ceremony and spoke the words of rejection in front of 300 witnesses, everything changed. And what happens next, no one was prepared for. Not the pack that cast her out into the teeth of winter's worst storm, not the ancient power sleeping beneath her skin, and certainly not the 10 mythic warriors who had been searching centuries for a queen. The harvest moon rose full and golden over Crescent Moon territory, casting long shadows through the ceremonial grounds. Sarah stood at the edge of the gathered pack, her thin frame nearly invisible among the larger wolves. She wore her only decent dress, pale blue, carefully mended, the hem still stained from the last rainfall. Around her, females preened in silk and lace, their hair elaborately styled, their perfumes a cacophony of jasmine and rose and vanilla that made her head ache. They were all hoping, praying. Tonight, Alpha Darius would choose his mate. Sarah wasn't foolish enough to hope. She'd spent 22 years learning exactly where she belonged in the pack hierarchy, and it wasn't at an alpha's side. But her mother had insisted she attend, practically shoved her out the door with stern instructions to at least try to look presentable. So here she stood, her mousy brown hair pulled back in a simple braid, trying to breathe through the overwhelming sense of anticipation and desperation that hung thick in the autumn air. The scent of forest and embers announced Darius before he appeared. The crowd parted like water, heads bowing in respect and submission. He strode onto the raised platform with the confidence of a wolf who had never questioned his place in the world. Tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of angular features that made females sigh and males straighten with nervous energy. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his ceremonial robes marking him as both alpha and heir to one of the oldest bloodlines in the Northern Territories. Behind him walked his beta, Marcus, and the pack's lead warrior, a massive brute named Cade. But Sarah's attention, everyone's attention, remained fixed on the alpha. "Wolves of Crescent Moon," Darius began, his voice carrying easily across the grounds, deep, commanding, layered with that unmistakable alpha authority that made wolves' spines straighten involuntarily. "Tonight, under the harvest moon, I claim what is mine by right and destiny." The crowd stirred with excitement. Sarah felt herself shrinking further back, hoping to disappear entirely. "The moon goddess has blessed this pack with prosperity and strength," Darius continued. "And now, she blesses me with a mate." His eyes scanned the crowd, and Sarah's heart clenched with sympathy for whichever poor female would be bound to his ego for life. "I have waited for the bond to manifest as tradition demands, and tonight I felt it snap into place." Gasps rippled through the assembly. A fated mate bond, not a chosen partnership, but the real thing, the mystical connection that transcended choice and linked two souls through the moon goddess herself. Sarah Ashwood. Her name fell from his lips like a death sentence. "Come forward." The world tilted. Sound became muffled, as if she'd been plunged underwater. Around her, wolves turned to stare, their expressions ranging from shock to disgust to pity. This had to be a mistake, a cruel joke. "Now," Darius commanded, and that alpha authority in his voice compelled her legs to move, even as her mind screamed at her to run. She climbed the platform steps on shaking legs, acutely aware of every eye fixed on her shabby dress, her work-roughened hands, her complete absence of the grace and beauty expected of an alpha's mate. Up close, Darius's scent was overwhelming. Forest and embers, but also ozone and steel, the scent of storms and dominance. For one brief, foolish moment, she wondered if maybe this could be real. If the moon goddess truly had chosen her, perhaps she wasn't as broken as everyone believed. Then she saw his eyes. Cold, calculating, utterly devoid of anything resembling joy or even acceptance. "The bond is there," he said, loud enough for the front rows to hear. His hand lifted as if to touch her face, and she felt it then, a golden thread between them, fragile as spider silk, warm as summer sun. The mate bond, real and undeniable. Her wolf stirred for the first time in her life, a faint presence awakening deep within her chest. Darius's hand dropped, his expression hardened into something cruel. "But I am Alpha of Crescent Moon. My mate will be strong, beautiful, worthy of standing at my side." His voice rose, carrying to every corner of the grounds. "My mate will bring honor to this pack, not shame." The first tendrils of pain lanced through her chest. No, he couldn't. "Sarah Ashwood, I, Alpha Darius Kane, reject you as my mate and Luna of this pack." The words hit like physical blows. The golden thread between them didn't just break, it shattered, fragmenting into 1,000 burning shards that tore through her chest, her stomach, her throat. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The pain was everywhere, molten and vicious, as if her very soul was being ripped apart from the inside. She collapsed to her knees on the platform, gasping, her hands clutching at her chest as if she could somehow hold herself together. Distantly she heard gasps, heard someone crying, heard Darius's voice, cold and formal. "Do you accept this rejection?" She should. She should end this torture, speak the words that would sever the bond completely. But her throat had closed, her lungs burning, black spots dancing across her vision. "I said," Darius's hand fisted in her hair, yanking her head back. The crowd murmured with unease. Even in rejection, such cruelty was considered poor form. "Do you accept?" She could barely force the words out. "I accept your rejection." The bond severed with a sound like breaking glass that only she could hear. The pain peaked, white-hot and all-consuming, then slowly began to recede, leaving behind a hollow ache and a strange lightness, as if chains she hadn't known she was wearing had suddenly fallen away. Darius released her hair, stepping back quickly, as if her touch might contaminate him. "Let this be known. Sarah Ashwood is no longer of Crescent Moon Pack. She will be escorted to the border immediately and left beyond our protection." He turned to face the crowd, dismissing her completely. "And now, I choose my mate. Lyanna Frost, come forward." A beautiful she-wolf in crimson silk glided up the platform steps, her smile victorious. Her scent, cinnamon and iron, and something sharp beneath, washed over Sarah as she passed. Lyanna had always been cruel, always made sure Sarah knew exactly how worthless she was. Of course, Darius would choose her. "Get up," a harsh voice commanded. One of the pack guards, a scarred warrior named Garrett, he grabbed her arm, hauling her to her feet with no gentleness. "You heard the Alpha. You're done here." They dragged her off the platform, through the crowd that parted with barely concealed disgust. Someone spat at her feet. Someone else laughed. The sense of the pack, hundreds of them familiar as home, now felt hostile, poisonous. She caught sight of her parents near the back of the crowd. Her father's face was stone, expressionless. Her mother looked away. "Please," Sarah gasped as the guards pulled her toward the pack house. "Please, at least let me get some clothes, some supplies." "Alpha's orders," Garrett said flatly. "As you are, right now. No belongings, no supplies. You made your choice, Omega." "I didn't choose anything." The words burst out of her, hoarse and desperate. "He rejected me. You all saw—" The back of his hand caught her across the face, splitting her lip. The taste of blood, copper and salt, flooded her mouth. "Should have made yourself worthy then, shouldn't you?" They hauled her through the packlands, past familiar buildings and paths, toward the northern border. The temperature had been dropping all evening, and now fat snowflakes began to fall from the heavy clouds overhead. A storm was coming. Everyone had been talking about it for days. The worst winter storm in decades, expected to hit tonight. They were sending her out into that, in a thin dress, with no shelter. They were sending her to die. At the border, they shoved her forward so hard she stumbled and fell to her knees on frozen ground. Behind her, she heard the guards turning back, their footsteps crunching through the first dusting of snow. "Wait!" She scrambled up, spinning around. "Please, you can't just leave me out here. I'll die." But they were already gone, swallowed by the darkness between the trees. Sarah stood alone at the edge of Crescent Moon territory, the wind picking up, the snow falling harder now, and understood with perfect clarity that this was how her story ended. Weak, broken Sarah Ashwood, who had never been good enough for anything, would die alone in the wilderness, and by morning no one would even remember her name. The storm came fast and merciless. Within an hour, the snow was falling so thick she could barely see 3 feet ahead. The wind shrieked through the trees like dying wolves, cutting through her dress as if it were paper. Her teeth chattered so hard she bit her tongue, adding more blood to the mix. She walked because stopping meant freezing, walked with no direction, no plan, just the animal instinct to keep moving, keep trying, keep living even when everything hurt. Her feet went numb first, then her hands. The pain in her chest from the broken bond had faded to a dull ache, but this new pain, the cold burning through her body, was worse in its own way. Immediate, physical, deadly. How long she walked, she didn't know. Time became meaningless. There was only snow and cold and the desperate need to keep moving. Then, through the white curtain of the blizzard, she saw it, a structure. Dark, angular, barely visible, she stumbled toward it, hope flaring painfully in her chest. A barn, old and half collapsed, but with 3 walls still standing and most of a roof intact. She fell through the doorway more than walked, landing hard on ancient hay that disintegrated into dust beneath her. Her hands were too numb to break her fall properly. But she was out of the wind, out of the worst of the snow. This was it then, her shelter, her grave. She crawled deeper into the barn, into the darkest corner where 2 walls met, and curled into the smallest ball she could manage, trying to conserve warmth, who was she kidding? This wasn't survival. This was just a slower death. "I'm sorry," she whispered to no one. To the moon goddess, maybe, who had chosen her for a mate bond only to watch her die hours later. "I'm sorry I wasn't good enough." Her wolf stirred again, that faint presence, and for the first time she heard it, a voice that wasn't quite a voice, more like a feeling pressed into her consciousness. You were always enough. They were never worthy. Then the cold dragged her down into darkness. She dreamed of warmth, of summer meadows and golden sunlight, of running through fields with wildflowers tangling in her fur, her paws eating up ground in powerful strides, of being strong, being whole, being... The dream shifted. Darkness crept in at the edges. The meadow froze, flowers dying, grass turning to ice. She was falling, tumbling through black water, drowning. No, not drowning. Warmth, real warmth, pressing against her from all sides. She stirred, consciousness returning in fragments. The scent hit her first, aged oak and winter snow and pine and something wild and untamed like a storm given form. It was everywhere, surrounding her, anchoring her. She forced her eyes open and found herself surrounded by wolves. 1, 2, 3. Her heart should have been racing with terror, should have been sending panic signals through her system, but the wolves weren't attacking. They were pressed against her. 10 massive forms arranged in a tight circle with her at the center, their bodies radiating heat, their steady breathing creating small clouds in the frozen air. They'd saved her, kept her from freezing. 4, 5, 6. She'd never seen wolves this large. Not even the pack's most powerful alphas could match them. Each one was easily the size of a bear, their forms rippling with muscle beneath thick winter coats. And their eyes, 7, 8, 9, their eyes glowed in the darkness, not the normal golden shine of wolf eyes reflecting light, but actual illumination, silver and blue and green like captured starlight. 10. The largest wolf, directly in front of her, opened its eyes. They were silver, bright as the full moon, ancient as stone. The scent she'd noticed, oak and snow and pine and storm, it came from this one, stronger than the others, layered with an authority that made even Darius's alpha presence feel like a child playing dress-up. The massive wolf's head tilted, studying her with an intelligence that was distinctly human. Then it shifted. The transformation was like nothing she'd ever seen. Smooth and fluid, bones flowing rather than breaking, fur receding like silk pulled across skin. In seconds, a man knelt where the wolf had been. He was older than Darius by perhaps 15 years, his face marked by a thin scar that ran from his left eyebrow to his jaw. His hair was dark, touched with silver at the temples, falling past his shoulders. His body was carved from years of battle, broad shoulders, muscular arms, scars layering his chest like a map of violence survived. He wore leather pants that had appeared with his shift, because shifting magic was convenient that way, and nothing else. His eyes remained that impossible silver, glowing faintly in the darkness. "You're awake," he said, his voice a deep rumble that vibrated through her bones. "Good. We weren't sure we'd reached you in time." Sarah's throat was too dry to speak. She tried anyway. "Who? What?" The corner of his mouth lifted in something that wasn't quite a smile. "My name is Cale Thornwood, and we've been waiting for you." Waiting. The word made no sense. Nothing about this made sense. "I don't understand." "You will." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and pressed 2 fingers to her forehead. His touch was warm, solid, and she felt something stir inside her at the contact. Not attraction, but recognition, as if her soul knew his had been expecting him. "Sleep now. When you wake, we'll be somewhere warm, somewhere safe, and then we'll explain everything." She wanted to argue, wanted answers now, but the exhaustion was too much. The cold had taken too much from her, and his presence, their presence, all 10 of them, felt safe in a way nothing ever had before. Her eyes closed, and this time she dreamed of silver eyes and a prophecy whispered in an ancient tongue. Sarah woke to silk. The sensation was so foreign, so unexpected, that for a moment she thought she was still dreaming. But no, she was definitely lying in a bed, and the sheets beneath her were definitely silk, cool and smooth against her skin. Above her, a ceiling of dark wood beams. Around her, stone walls hung with tapestries in rich colors. She sat up carefully, her body aching in a dozen places but no longer numb with cold. Someone had changed her clothes. She now wore a soft cotton nightgown, modest and clean. Her feet were bandaged. When had that happened? The room was large, furnished with obvious care. A fireplace crackled with real flames. Heavy curtains were drawn over what must be a window. A pitcher of water and a glass sat on the bedside table, along with a covered tray that smelled like food. She was reaching for the water when the door opened. Kyle entered carrying another tray, this one laden with steaming bowls and fresh bread. His silver eyes found her immediately, and something in his expression softened. "Good. You're stronger than we thought." "Where am I?" Her voice came out rough, unused. "Shadow Peak. Our home." He set the tray on a small table near the fire, gesturing for her to join him. "You've been sleeping for 2 days." 2 days. She'd lost 2 days. Sarah slid out of bed on unsteady legs, grateful when Cale was immediately there, his hand under her elbow, steadying her without taking over. He guided her to one of the chairs and waited until she was settled before taking the seat across from her. "Eat first," he said, pushing a bowl toward her, "then questions." The soup was rich and savory, filled with meat and vegetables and herbs that made her eyes nearly roll back in her head. She hadn't realized how hungry she was, couldn't remember the last real meal she'd eaten. She forced herself to eat slowly, to not make herself sick, but it took effort. Kyle watched her with patient attention, occasionally refilling her bowl before she had to ask. Finally, when the edge of her hunger had been dulled, she set down her spoon and met his eyes. "Why did you save me?" "Because we've been searching for you for 300 years, he said simply. "Because you're the one from the prophecy. Because you're the matriarch." The words hung in the air between them, impossible and heavy. "I'm nobody," Sarah said. "I'm a broken Omega who couldn't even shift. I'm powerful beyond measure," Kyle interrupted, his voice gentle but firm. "But your power was bound, hidden. We suspected, when the bond manifested between you and that fool Alpha, that the binding might break. Rejection often does what force cannot. It severs the artificial chains on a wolf's true nature." Sarah's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat on the table. "I don't understand any of this. What prophecy? What binding? Why would anyone—" "Your parents." His expression darkened. "They bound your power when you were an infant, wrapped your wolf so tight in spell work that she couldn't emerge, couldn't even whisper to you. They acted out of fear." The world tilted again. Her parents had done this to her. Why? The word came out broken. Kyle reached into his shirt and pulled out an aged piece of parchment, so old it looked like it might disintegrate at a touch. He unfolded it carefully and turned it so she could see the writing, elegant script in a language she didn't recognize, and beneath it, a translation in more modern text. He read it aloud, his voice taking on a rhythmic quality, like a prayer or a song. When winter's rage meets the coward's moon, the matriarch will rise, cast out too soon. She will be silver where others are gold, a queen of mercy, fierce yet controlled. Born in the lowest, forged in rejection's fire, she will come when the old laws expire. 10 shall guard her, bound by ancient right, warriors of shadow, born of endless night, and she will heal what was broken, bring justice to words left unspoken. Silence filled the room after the last word faded. That's, Sarah swallowed hard. That's about me? We believe so. The timing matches, the circumstances match, and he leaned forward slightly, his silver eyes intense. Your scent. When we found you in that barn, even unconscious and half-frozen, your scent was unmistakable. Lavender and morning dew and wildflowers, the scent described in the ancient texts, the scent of the matriarch. But I can't shift, she protested weakly. I've never shifted. Because the binding prevented it, but the rejection broke those chains. His hand moved across the table, stopping just short of touching hers. Your wolf is awake now. Can you feel her? She could. That presence she'd felt stirring in her chest, stronger now than ever before. Not a whisper anymore, but a voice, clear and powerful. I am here, her wolf said, and the words resonated through every cell of her body. I have always been here, and now, sister, we are free. Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks. She didn't try to stop them. How do I don't know how to shift. We'll teach you. Kyle's voice was soft. There are 10 of us, the Shadow Guard. We took an oath 3 centuries ago to find and protect the matriarch when she finally emerged, to serve her, train her, fight for her, if you'll have us. She looked at him through her tears, this powerful, scarred warrior who knelt metaphorically at her feet, offering her everything. I don't know how to be a queen. No one does at first. He smiled, and it transformed his face, making him look younger. But you'll learn, and we'll be with you every step. Her wolf surged within her, eager and excited and ready. Okay, Sarah whispered, teach me. The training grounds behind Shadow Peak Keep were ancient, the stone worn smooth by countless centuries of warriors practicing their craft. Sarah stood in the center, barefoot on cold stone, wearing simple training clothes, loose pants and a wrapped top that would move with her body. Around the perimeter stood the Shadow Guard. She'd met them all over the past few hours as they'd introduced themselves with varying degrees of formality. Kyle, their leader, who commanded with quiet authority. Riker, second in command, built like a mountain with kind brown eyes. Thorn, the silent one, whose silver-streaked hair fell over watchful gray eyes. Asher, who smiled easily and fought dirty, his energy infectious. Drake, serious and tactical, always calculating angles. Finn, the youngest of them, though still decades older than her, with copper-red hair and freckles. Jax, Riker's twin, identical except for a scar bisecting his jaw. Rowan, dark-skinned and elegant, moving with a dancer's grace. Cole, built lean and fast, a strategist who saw patterns in everything. And Mira, the only female guard, her black hair cropped short, her amber eyes fierce. They were watching her now, patient and encouraging, as Kyle stood beside her. First shift is the hardest, he explained. Your wolf wants out, but you don't trust the process yet. You'll feel like you're breaking, but you're not. You're becoming. What do I do? Close your eyes, focus inward, find your wolf. Sarah obeyed, closing her eyes, breathing deep. The scent of pine and snow surrounded her, grounding her, and there in the center of her chest she felt it, her wolf, massive, powerful, pacing. I'm here, Sarah thought at her. Then let me show you what we are, her wolf responded. The shift started like a wave of heat rolling through her body. She gasped, her eyes flying open in panic, but Kale's voice steadied her. Don't fight it. Let it happen. The heat intensified, spreading from her chest outward. Her bones, they weren't breaking. They were flowing, restructuring, finding new shapes. Fur rippled across her skin, silver white and thick. Her senses exploded. Suddenly she could smell everything, hear everything, feel the individual currents of air moving around her. She fell forward, but her hands, no, her paws, caught her weight, 4 legs instead of 2, a body that felt powerful, massive, right? Around her she heard gasps. Sarah opened her eyes, and the world had changed. Colors were different, muted in some ways, enhanced in others. But the scents, oh, the scents. She could smell each individual. Guard could identify them by scent alone now, could smell the stone beneath her paws, ancient and patient, could smell the forest beyond, rich with life. She looked down at herself and froze. She was huge, far larger than any wolf she'd ever seen. Her paws were the size of dinner plates. Her fur gleamed silver white, shot through with threads of starlight that seemed to move of their own accord. And when she moved, power rippled through her muscles, raw, primal, undeniable. "We are magnificent," her wolf said with deep satisfaction. Sarah raised her head and looked at the shadow guard. They were all staring, expressions ranging from awe to vindication to joy. "She is the matriarch," Mira breathed, dropping to one knee. One by one, the others followed suit. 10 warriors, each powerful enough to level a pack alone, kneeling before her. Sarah's wolf threw back her head and howled. The sound echoed across the mountains, carrying power and promise and the announcement of a queen's rise. The stone beneath her paws cracked, spiderwebbing outward from where she stood. And in that moment, Sarah understood. She was never broken. She was just waiting to become who she was always meant to be. Days turned to weeks, and Sarah's training consumed her. Every morning began with shifting practice until she could move between forms as easily as breathing. Then, combat training, where Mira and Rowan taught her to fight with tooth and claw and no mercy. Afternoons were for learning pack law, history, the old ways that most modern wolves had forgotten. But it was the evenings she cherished most, when the shadow guard gathered in the great hall, the fire roaring, and they became not warriors and queen, but family. A found family, forged in prophecy and choice. Riker told terrible jokes that made her groan. Finn taught her to play cards and cheated outrageously. Drake read poetry in a deep voice that made even battle epics sound like love songs. Asher could cook better than anyone she'd ever met and took pride in making her try new things. Thorn, quiet Thorn, carved her a small wolf figurine from dark wood and pressed it into her hands without a word. And Kyle was steady, patient, always there when she needed him, but never pushing. The bond between them wasn't a mate bond, wasn't that mystical, inescapable connection she'd felt with Darius. This was something better, chosen, earned, a foundation built on trust and respect and growing affection. One night, 6 weeks after her arrival, she found him on the battlements, looking out over the forest. "Can't sleep?" she asked, joining him. "Old habit. When you've lived as long as we have, you learn that danger often comes in darkness." She leaned against the stone wall, breathing in his scent, oak and snow and pine and storm. It had become as familiar as her own. "How old are you exactly?" 347. He said it casually, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. "Though I look good for my age, don't you think?" She laughed. "You look like you're 40. "Flattery." But he was smiling. "What brings you up here, Sarah?" She sobered. "I've been thinking about them. Darius, Lyanna, the pack. I know at some point we'll have to face them, right?" Kyle's expression darkened. "They cast you out to die. They deserve whatever justice you see fit to deliver." "I know, but..." She struggled to find the words. "I don't want to become cruel like they were. I don't want revenge. I want justice," he finished softly. "You want them to face what they've done, learn from it, become better. You want to heal, not destroy." "Is that weak?" She hated how small her voice sounded. "No." He turned to face her fully, his silver eyes fierce. "It's the strongest thing you could do. Mercy when you have the power to destroy. That's what queens are made of." His hand lifted, cupping her face gently. "You are exactly who the prophecy promised. And more." The air between them shifted, charged with something electric. His thumb brushed her cheekbone, and she leaned into the touch, her eyes closing. "Kyle," she whispered. I know. His forehead pressed against hers. I know, Starlight. But you should be sure. You should be certain. Because once I claim you, once you claim me, the Shadow Guard will be bound to you not just by oath, but by heart. And there's no going back from that. She opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. I'm sure. His kiss was gentle, reverent, and tasted like coming home. The scout found them in the 7th week, one of Crescent Moon's rangers, tracking something that took him too far north, right into Shadow Peak territory. Cole caught him trying to creep away and brought him to the Great Hall where Sarah sat with Kyle and the other guards, discussing supply routes. The scout, a young wolf named Peter who'd never been particularly cruel to her, went white when he saw her. Sarah, but you should be dead? She stood, and the movement made him flinch. Even in human form, her power was palpable now. That was the plan, wasn't it? Cast me out, let Winter do the dirty work, and no one has to feel guilty. I'm sorry, Peter stammered. I didn't. Alpha Darius said. Alpha Darius is a coward and a fool, Kale said flatly. But you'll tell him something for us. Tell him the matriarch lives. Tell him she's claimed Shadow Peak territory, and tell him that if he wants to dispute that claim, he's welcome to try. Peter ran. They let him go, knowing exactly what would happen next. 3 days later, Crescent Moon's war party appeared on the horizon. 25 wolves, all in battle form, Darius at their head. Lyanna beside him, her cinnamon and iron scent sharp with violence. Behind them, warriors Sarah recognized, Garrett, who'd hit her. Marcus, Darius's beta, the pack's fiercest fighters. They'd come to wipe out what they saw as a threat. They had no idea what they were walking into. Sarah stood at the gates of Shadow Peak, with the Shadow Guard flanking her, 5 on each side, all in human form still. She wore leather armor now, beautifully crafted, fitted perfectly to her body. Her hair was unbound, silver white like her fur, falling past her shoulders. She looked every inch a queen. Darius shifted to human form as he approached, his army remaining in wolf form behind him. He still smelled of forest and embers and ozone and steel, but now the scent was tinged with something sour. Fear. Sarah Ashwood, he called out, his voice carrying. I don't know what game you're playing, but you're on Crescent Moon territory. Submit now, and I'll be merciful. Sarah laughed. The sound was rich and genuine, and made several of the wolves behind Darius whine with unease. Darius, still delusional, I see. This is Shadow Peak, and it's been independent territory for 3 centuries. But I'll make you an offer. Turn around now, go home, and we'll forget this happened. You think you're special because some rogues took you in? He sneered. You're still weak, still broken, still the pathetic Omega I rejected. Is that right? She smiled, and it was all teeth. Want to test that theory? Lyanna shifted then, taking human form beside Darius. In the weeks since Sarah had seen her, the beautiful she-wolf had only grown more striking. Her red hair cascaded down her back, her body perfectly proportioned. She wore warrior's leathers that left little to the imagination, and her smile was vicious. Oh, I do, Lyanna purred. I've been wanting to put you in your place for years. Ladies first, then. Sarah's voice was mild, but her eyes glinted. Shift. Show me what an alpha female can do. Lyanna shifted in a fluid motion, her wolf form impressive, easily twice the size of a normal wolf, her fur a deep russet, her eyes blazing amber. She lunged. Sarah didn't shift, didn't move. Just waited until Lyanna was 3 feet away, then ducked low and drove her fist into the wolf's ribs with precisely calculated force. The blow sent Lyanna flying 15 feet. She hit the ground hard, shifting back to human involuntarily, gasping for air. The message was clear. Sarah could defeat a shifted alpha without even using her wolf form. The Crescent Moon warriors stirred with unease. Anyone else? Sarah asked pleasantly. Enough games! Darius's voice shook with rage. He shifted, his wolf form powerful and dark-furred, and howled. The sound was a command, an alpha order. Attack. 25 wolves surged forward as one. The Shadow Guard shifted, and Sarah's world exploded into revelation. She'd seen them in wolf form before, of course, had trained with them, run with them, but always they'd held back, kept their true forms contained. Now, facing real threat, they unleashed what they truly were. They weren't normal wolves. They weren't even dire wolves. They were something older, something from the time before packs, before territories, before the modern world had forgotten what real power looked like. Each Shadowguard wolf was 3 times larger than Darius, their forms rippling with muscle and ancient magic. Their eyes glowed like captured stars, silver and blue and green and gold. Their fur moved like liquid shadow, seeming to absorb light. And their presence, it was overwhelming, crushing, the kind of primal dominance that made every instinct scream run. The crescent moon wolves skidded to a halt, whimpering. Sarah shifted too, and her transformation made even the Shadow Guard pause. She towered over them all, her silver-white fur gleaming with threads of starlight, her eyes molten gold. When she moved, the ground trembled. Darius stood frozen, his wolf form suddenly looking small and inadequate. He'd challenged a queen with warriors. He'd brought an army to face legends. "Kneel," Sarah's wolf voice rang out, carrying that irresistible matriarch authority that went beyond alpha power, beyond pack bonds, into something deeper and older. One by one, the crescent moon wolves dropped to their bellies. Some of them were crying, all of them were shaking. Darius was the last to fall, his pride warring with the instinct that screamed at him to submit. Finally, his legs buckled. He knelt. Sarah shifted back to human, and the Shadow Guard followed suit, forming a protective semicircle around her. "I was cast out," she said, her voice carrying clearly, "rejected, left to die by all of you." She walked forward slowly, her bare feet silent on the ground. "You all watched. Some of you laughed. None of you spoke up. Silence. Absolute, terrible silence. And now you come to my territory, threatening war, because you're afraid of what I've become. Afraid that the Omega you discarded might actually have power, might actually be worth something." She stopped in front of Darius, looking down at him where he knelt. "I could kill you," she said quietly. "I could end you right here, right now, and it would be justice. You sentenced me to death. Why shouldn't I return the favor?" He was trembling. This close, she could see tears on his muzzle, could smell the acrid stench of his fear. "But I'm not you," she continued. "I'm not cruel. I'm not small. So here's what's going to happen." She raised her voice so everyone could hear. "Crescent Moon Pack, I am Sarah Ashwood, the matriarch of Shadow Peak. This territory is mine, protected by the Shadow Guard. Any wolf who needs sanctuary, any Omega, any wolf who's been cast aside or abused or broken, they can come here. They will be welcomed, protected, valued." She turned back to Darius. "As for you, you will return to your pack and announce the new law. No wolf will be rejected, cast out, or harmed for their rank. Omegas will be treated with the same respect as alphas. Mate rejection will require council approval and just cause. And any alpha who abuses their power will answer to me." Darius's eyes widened. "You're letting us live?" "I'm giving you a chance to be better," Sarah corrected. "Don't waste it." She turned away from him, dismissing him utterly, and faced the other wolves. "Go home. Spread the word. There's a new power in these mountains, and she believes in justice, not vengeance. She believes in healing, not harming. But," her voice hardened, "cross me again, threaten my people again, and you'll learn that mercy has limits." The crescent moon wolves scrambled to their feet and ran. Even Darius, even Lyanna fled like the frightened children they were. Only when they were gone did Sarah's legs go weak. Kyle caught her immediately, his arms solid and supporting. "You did it," he murmured against her hair. "You faced them, defeated them, and chose mercy. You're everything the prophecy promised, Starlight." "We did it," she corrected, looking at each of the Shadow Guard. "I couldn't have done any of this without you. Without all of you." "That's what family does," Mira said firmly. "We stand together." And as the sun set over Shadow Peak, painting the mountains in shades of gold and crimson, Sarah felt something settle in her chest. Not a mate bond, she'd never trust that again, but something better. A chosen bond, forged in fire and loyalty and love freely given. She was home. 2 months later, under a bright moon, Sarah stood in Shadow Peak's courtyard surrounded by every wolf who'd sought sanctuary in her territory. Word had spread fast. Omegas from a dozen packs had made the journey north, some traveling for weeks. They'd come broken and found healing, come afraid and found safety. Kyle stood beside her, his hand clasped in hers, as they formalized their union before the moon goddess and their people. Not mates by magic, but partners by choice. Equals. And somehow, that was infinitely more powerful. The Shadow Guard stood witness, each of them smiling with genuine joy. Over the past months, they'd transformed from warriors into family, their ancient oaths fulfilled in ways they'd never imagined. As Sarah looked out over the gathered wolves, at the Omegas who'd found their voices, the warriors who'd sworn new allegiances, the families who'd formed from broken pieces, she felt her wolf stir contentedly. We did it, Sarah thought. We survived, her wolf corrected. But more than that, we thrived. We became exactly who we were meant to be. The celebration lasted deep into the night, laughter and music echoing through the mountains. But as the last of the guests drifted to sleep and the fire burned down to embers, Kyle pulled Sarah aside to the battlements where they'd first kissed. "There's something you should know," he said quietly, his silver eyes serious. "Finn found something in the old texts, a warning." Sarah's contentment dimmed slightly. "What kind of warning?" "The blood moon rises in 3 months, and with it, something ancient will wake, something that was sealed away centuries ago, before even we were born." He took her hands. "The trials aren't over, Starlight. In some ways, they're just beginning." "Let them come," Sarah said, her voice steady. She looked out over her territory, her people, her chosen family. "I was sold to what they called a beast. I was cast out to die. I was broken and rebuilt. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Kyle smiled, fierce and proud. "Together," he agreed. And so, Sarah Ashwood's journey continued, from Omega to matriarch, from victim to queen, from broken to whole. She'd learned that true strength wasn't about dominance or cruelty. It was about mercy, justice, and the courage to choose healing over harm. She'd been rejected by a fool who wanted power. She'd been chosen by warriors who valued honor. And in the end, she'd chosen herself. Chosen to rise, chosen to fight, chosen to become something magnificent. The prophecy had been fulfilled. The matriarch had risen. And the old ways were returning, one healed soul at a time. What happens when the weakest wolf discovers she was never weak at all? She becomes a legend. She becomes a queen. She becomes exactly who she was always meant to be. So tell me, what would you do if you discovered the chains holding you back were never real? If everything you thought was weakness was actually power waiting to be unleashed? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story of transformation and triumph resonated with you, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear that they're stronger than they know. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter, where we'll discover what ancient evil the blood moon awakens, and whether Sarah and the Shadow Guard can survive what's coming. Thank you for listening to Sarah's journey from broken Omega to matriarch queen. Her story proves that rejection isn't the end. Sometimes it's the beginning of something extraordinary. We'll see you in the next chapter.